Mr. Putin at that time had a popularity rate somewhere between 1 to 3%. And it was then that he launched the Second Chechen War, using often very coarse language to describe what he thought of Muslim people in the Caucasus and specifically in Chechnya. And it was that war that made him the so-called war hero and war leader that he became later on. So Kadyrov is a puppet of the Putin regime, who is held in power by the presence of Russian arms in Chechnya.
You just mentioned the second war in Chechnya. Chechnya has been twice the scene of deadly wars with Russia following the collapse of the Soviet Union. Tell us more about that history.
Well, the history is very long. I'm sure you wouldn't have time for that, but let me just say that the great Russian writer Tolstoy personally took part in the Tsarist campaign to conquer the Caucasus, including Chechnya. So the Russian presence in the Caucasus dates back centuries ago, and it of course then transformed into the Soviet era, and it then became a hotspot in the 1990s when the Soviet Union was dissolved at the end of 1991, because the Chechens and the Ingush and all the other local nations, who, by the way, had been brutalized under the Stalin regime, mostly deported in an attempt to kill all of them, and they deported to Siberia. So by 1990s, they were now hoping to gain their own independence, and it became a kind of a very difficult political issue from the point of view of the Russian public. Hence, the First Chechen War in the middle of the 1990s, which ended up in a kind of a draw. In those days, the Russian oligarchs basically purchased peace by handing over suitcases of cash to the Chechen insurrectionists, and therefore the First Chechen War in the middle of the 1990s had failed to find a permanent solution that would be acceptable to the Kremlin. Hence, the Second Chechen War I have already mentioned.
I thank you, Igor Luksh. That's all we have time for now, but thank you so much for joining us with your analysis today.